I have some reporting that Savannah wanted to offer this $1 million reward early on in all of this, early on in the investigation, right after her mom went missing, and that she was discouraged from doing so by law enforcement. Therefore, any suggestion that the photographs were taken on different days.
A reporter reveals Savannah wanted to act sooner, but was held back. A sheriff publicly calls a report from 4 major networks purely speculative, and a lab choice turns the case's most important DNA sample useless. Let's look at all 3 and check what the experts actually say. I'm Marcus Wren, the creator of the Tell Index, a framework for analyzing statements and behavior in criminal cases. Nancy Guthrie, the 84-year-old mother of Today co-anchor Savannah Guthrie, disappeared from her Tucson, Arizona home on February 1st. Today's video analyzes an episode of the podcast Brian Entin Investigates, recorded on day 24 of the case, the same day Savannah announced a $1 million reward, alongside a wave of new reporting on DNA and camera images. Hit subscribe if you want to see more analysis like this. Right at the start, Brian Entin announces the day's biggest news. Savannah has just announced a $1 million reward.
Who were concerned that a $1 million reward at that stage would lead to just too many tips coming in and that they would be overwhelmed and it would clog the system, essentially. Some are reporting, some outlets have been reporting that it was the sheriff specifically who told her not to do the $1 million reward early on. I just know that it was law enforcement. Although my sense is if it was early on, it may have been before the FBI even got involved in the case, because remember...
The reason Entin gives too many tips would clog the system sounds simple, but it isn't just idle speculation. Cross-checking this against the case file, CNN later interviewed law enforcement experts on this exact question. Former FBI agent Josh Campbell explained that time is critical in a kidnapping case, and letting a mountain of false leads slow down the process of sorting fact from fiction could do more harm than good. CNN senior security analyst John Wackrow pointed to a more specific risk, simultaneously appealing to the abductor to do the right thing while offering a massive reward to encourage people close to him to turn him in could backfire and endanger the victim. A separate private intelligence expert, interviewed by Radar Online, said plainly that offering $1 million upfront risks inviting a higher counter-demand from the kidnapper. And in practice, over 750 new tips came in shortly after the reward was announced. Exactly the kind of overload the original concern anticipated. It's worth being fair here, and only once in this video. Delaying a decision the victim's own family desperately wants to make is emotionally brutal. But based on what multiple independent experts said afterward, this appears to have been a decision grounded in real professional reasoning, not arbitrary obstruction. After playing Savannah's video, Entin moves to another development from that day.
We have confirmed through sources that the photos that were taken from the surveillance camera in the front of Nancy Guthrie's house, you guys remember these 2 photos. There was the photo with the suspect with the backpack on, and then there was the photo of him without the backpack on. And it turns out, according to my sources, these photos are from different days. One of them is from when Nancy Guthrie was kidnapped early in the morning of February 1st. The other is from a previous day, and I have not been able to confirm what day that is. But this is significant, and I told you guys this yesterday, because this means that the person or persons were stalking Nancy Guthrie's house, were casing the house. This wasn't just someone who showed up early in the morning on February 1st and decided to do this because they were here a previous day. Which is chilling, and it's scary. It sort of makes this whole thing a bit more frightening, I think. But it's what a lot of people suspected, that this wasn't just some random act, that this was targeted, and it appears that this is evidence of that, because we know that the person was here days before, or at least a day before, Nancy Guthrie was kidnapped. I want to bring back the January 11th date to you again, because So many of the neighbors told me that when the FBI were canvassing this area, they were specifically asking about January 11th. Do you have video from January 11th? And we kept hearing again, nighttime hours of January 11th, which makes me wonder if that other surveillance photo is from January 11th. Is that why they were so interested in January 11th? I don't know that for sure. I just know that it's from a previous day. But regardless, it's a really big piece of information because it shows that the suspect was here stalking the house. And you're gonna see when I get into this with my guest in a second, there are questions about whether this is the same person even. Yes, they have the same build. It could be a different jacket depending on the infrared and the lighting. It's hard to tell, but there are a lot of people who think that this is not the same person and that he's wearing a different jacket, which is also a possibility here. So we came out with this reporting about it being 2 different days, and also every other network also had the same reporting. I think ABC was the first to report it. Fox also has it, we have it, CBS has it, and the sheriff put out a new statement last night, and let me just read it to you. Basically, calling into question this reporting. Let me pull it up. They had it on their Twitter page. My service is kind of slow out here. We have the Starlink, which has been a huge lifesaver. But it's still difficult sometimes. I'm kind of far from the Starlink here. All right, let me read you the statement. I found it here. So this is the sheriff's official comment on that. They say, "We are aware that doorbell images released earlier in the investigation depict a suspect in different stages of attire, including with and without a backpack. There is no date or timestamp associated with these images. Therefore, any suggestion that the photographs were taken on different days is purely speculative. This remains an active and ongoing criminal investigation. As with any investigation, conclusions will be guided by verifiable evidence and establishable facts. Speculation without factual support does not advance this investigative process." So they're saying that this is speculation and that it's purely speculative. I will say that I stand by my sources, and I know every other network had sources too. So I don't know why the sheriff is denying it, but my sources are good sources, and they say that they know now that these images are from different days. Is it possible that the sheriff is just not in the loop on this? That the FBI hasn't kept him in the loop? I don't know. I mean, remember, I also reported that FBI agents were going to the gun stores with 40 photos and 40 names, trying to see if any of the employees or owners knew who any of those people were, and the sheriff outright denied that that was happening and said that that was not true, and I literally talked to the gun store owners. And again, other networks then reported that too. So, I stand by my reporting on this.
This isn't an isolated event. It's a pattern that has now repeated twice in the same case. Multiple independent news sources confirm a specific detail. The sheriff publicly denies it, and the facts afterward lean toward the reporting. What's notable isn't who was right about the evidence itself. None of us have access to the real case file. It's that the same deny then be proven wrong pattern has now happened at least twice, matching the same gap between declared position and observed reality framework. This series used in the earlier FBI ransom note video. Before wrapping up the news, Entin returns to a less noticed but potentially more important development.
The DNA developments here are not good news, and this is reporting that I have confirmed here on the ground, but also my colleague Libby Dean in DC has some really good sources and has also double-sourced this. So what we're reporting is that the DNA found inside Nancy Guthrie's home was only a partial sample and was not viable for CODIS. And so what that means is, remember the sheriff said over the weekend that they were having DNA challenges, and the sheriff opted to send the DNA to the private lab that he has used in Florida instead of to the FBI's lab at Quantico. And the fact that this is not viable means it's just not a strong DNA sample. We know, according to the sheriff at least, that it is not DNA connected to Nancy Guthrie or to anyone within her inner circle, but getting it in the CODIS database was important because CODIS is huge. It's a federal database, but there are, a ton of known criminals in this database, but they cannot even get it into the database because the DNA sample is not viable. So that is not good news. Remember, there was the DNA that they tested from the glove that was found 2 miles away. That DNA they were able to get into the database, and it just didn't have a match in the database. But I was much more interested from the beginning about the DNA from inside the house. And it turns out that at this point, it's not viable and they cannot get it into the CODIS database. And there are apparently also concerns that they will even be able to test it for genetic genealogy. Now, hopefully these things will improve. Maybe they can try a different lab or someone else with a different level of expertise. But at this point, again, our sources are confirming that the DNA found in the house was not viable for CODIS. And the sheriff over the weekend mentioned that they have been having challenges with that DNA.
Cross-checking this within the case itself, this is a notable contrast. 2 DNA samples, 2 different handling processes, and only one made it into the national database. The glove sample, less directly connected to the interior crime scene, succeeded. The house sample, the one most likely to be directly connected to whoever did this, failed, after being sent to the sheriff's own private lab instead of the federal lab built for exactly this purpose. This isn't speculation about motive. It's simply a real decision and consequence chain worth questioning as a process issue, not a question about any person. A delay that turned out to have solid professional grounding. A deny then be proven wrong pattern that repeated twice in the same case. And a lab choice that turned the most important DNA sample into a dead end. 3 very different stories, all pointing to the same thing. In a case stretching over weeks under enormous media pressure, every small decision can become a detail worth examining later. Which of these 3 stands out most to you? Leave a comment below, I read everyone, and hit subscribe to see more analysis like this.